Up next is House File
Well, there's no reason.
4343 from Representative Lee. While Representative Lee gets moved up to the front of the room, she will move that House File 4343 be laid over for possible inclusion in the 2026 tax bill. There is an amendment in your packet titled A5 for your review as we get started here.
Yes, I'd like to move the
Yeah.
Welcome to your committee,
Yeah.
Rep. Lee. Would
Thank
you like to
you.
move your the A5?
Yes, I'd like to move the A5.
Excellent. So Rep. Lee's moved the A5 amendment. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion carries. The amendment's adopted. The bill is in the form the author would like. Representative Lee to House File 4343.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I would use a sign because the tech seems to have been failing the committee for the last couple of hearings. So hopefully that is helpful. Thank you, chairs and committee members, for the opportunity to present House File 4343, a bill that would help us modernize our sales tax code so that Minnesota taxpayers can stop subsidizing billion-dollar corporations. Most important for folks at home, my bill would also cut the sales tax rate for everyone because it broadens our tax base. In the last 40 to 60 years, there are two key ways that our economy has changed. First, we have transitioned from a goods-producing economy to a service-based economy. Nationwide, services made up 70% of personal consumption in last year, November 2025, up from 45% at the beginning of 1950. As you can see here, Minnesota has followed this trend. So we enacted sales tax in I think somewhere between 1965 and 68, and the red line is consumption of services. And so that kind of outpaced consumption of goods in about the mid-'80s. And that's really important for us to know. In real life, this looks like people renting clothes or bags instead of buying them, paying for lawn services instead of purchasing lawn mowers. Another way to measure this is to look at how much services contribute to national GDP. Since the early 1950s, the services sector has expanded from about just 1/2 of U.S. GDP to now more than 75% of it. And that growth has come in both absolute and relative terms. One way to think about this is that obviously the GDP pie has expanded, and also, right, like the services slice of that is much bigger than it's ever been. This trend matters because Minnesota taxes the majority of goods while exempting the majority of services. This means that our tax base to fund essential programs like housing, hospitals, or schools is at great risk and shrinking relative to the economy. And a second trend to note is that our economy has transitioned from people selling items door to door to targeted ads that flash across your screen and entice you to order food or drinks as you watch your sports games. Regardless of whether you call this digitization a service or an annoyance, one thing is clear. By exempting advertising services from sales tax, we are giving taxpayer dollars to the platforms and products seeking our attention on social media, internet search results, and websites, which seem to be packing more and more banner ads each day, each week, trying to grab our attention. Currently, Minnesota businesses pay about 48% of sales tax revenue. We saw this in the tax incidence report that Mr. Willett shared with us yesterday. Conversely, large tech platforms like Meta and Alphabet pay little to no taxes, while reaping in billions of dollars in revenues as they sell ads to us. Why would we give an unfair advantage to these billion-dollar corporations? My bill, House File 4343, gives Minnesota another option. House File 4343 would raise would raise about $600 million in revenues by taxing digital advertisements and out-of-home advertisements, the two areas of advertising that are projected to continue to grow. Because House File 4343 would widen the tax base, we are also able to reduce the statewide sales tax rate for everyone, lowering the combined rate down from 6.875 to 6.75. This is possible because, again, this allows the tax base to capture the growth of some of the largest and most profitable industries in the tech sector, which are currently exempt. And as a reminder, we saw yesterday in the review of the tax incidence study how regressive sales tax is. This bill would reverse that by widening the base and getting us higher in the suits index. And so I know we're short on time, so I'm going to turn this over to the testifiers who will go more into detail about the bill and provide context on why it is important for us as policymakers to consider revenue raisers like this in this changing economy. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Lee. So we'll move to testifiers. We have a number of testifiers. So I'm going to call you up kind of in groups. I'm going to tell you if you're on deck. I'm going to time everybody. You have 2 minutes. First up is Eric Harris Bernstein. On deck is Dalton Danielson. And after that, Tanner Fritzinger. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as you get started.
Chair Gomez, Chair Davids, members of the committee, my name is Eric Bernstein. I'm the Coalition Director of We Make Minnesota. We advocate for a strong tax code and a budget sufficient to meet our public investment needs. We're very grateful for the opportunity to share our support for 4343. As we've heard, our economy is shifting towards services and increasingly digital services. The digital advertising industry alone has grown from $8 billion in 2008 to $258 billion in 2024. That's a rate of growth of over 3,000% compared to GDP growth of 156%, so 30 times growth compared to 2.5 times growth. So if we leave these industries exempt, we end up with a larger rate on everyone else. I've been sharing a little experiment that I did comparing sales tax revenues adjusted for sales tax rates. And so just as an example, South Dakota, they have a much broader sales tax base. They raise 30% more money per capita, even though their rate is 40% lower. And so when we leave our porous tax code, or our sales tax code porous in the way it is, we currently exempt more sales tax base than we actually tax. The result is a higher rate on everyone else, and that's not efficient. I know we're short on time, so I'll skip ahead and just say, I want to underscore the point that Representative Lee shared, because one argument against this policy, a common one, will be about business-to-business sales and tax pyramiding. This is an argument that gets trotted out, and I understand it in theory, but the reality is businesses do pay an enormous amount of sales tax in Minnesota. As Rep. Lee said, 48%, which is more than Minnesota households pay. The difference is paid by non-resident households. And so if you're in construction, if you're in retail, you are greatly affected by our sales tax rates. Right now, what we have is arbitrary exemptions for services and businesses operating in the digital economy. And so that means higher rates on all of us and a greater reliance on less stable forms of revenue like income taxes.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. That's
great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, Dalton Danielson, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as we get started. Tanner Fritzinger, you're on deck.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Dalton Danielson, Fiscal Policy Director with the Minnesota Business Partnership. MBP represents CEOs and senior executives from Minnesota-based companies across healthcare, manufacturing, agriculture, and technology. Our members employ 1 in 6 Minnesotans statewide and compete every day in national and global markets. The Minnesota Business Partnership strongly opposes House File 4343. At its core, this bill imposes a sales tax on business inputs, not final consumer purchases, which are also often taxed. Taxing these inputs creates a tax pyramiding, embedding hidden taxes into prices that are ultimately passed on to consumers. This approach undermines transparency and violates long-standing principles of sound tax policy. Additionally, House File 4343 would impact every business in Minnesota, not just a narrow segment of the economy. While the bill is often described as targeting large technology companies, advertising is a critical tool used by manufacturers, retailers, healthcare providers, nonprofits, and small businesses alike. This proposal would raise costs across the board, affecting both Minnesota's headquarters economy and Main Street businesses trying to grow and compete. Just to reiterate, this would impact businesses from Lanesboro to Detroit Lakes, from the Iron Range in Duluth to Rochester, and from Rosemount to Farmington. All these employers, large and small, who rely on advertising to reach customers, expand operations, and hire workers. In addition, House File 4343 raises serious legal and administrative concerns. Digital advertising transactions routinely cross state lines, involving advertisers, platforms, servers, and audiences in multiple jurisdictions. Taxing these transactions without a clear and workable sourcing framework exposes Minnesota to Commerce Clause challenges and the risk of multiple taxation. Similar taxes in other states, primarily Maryland and Washington, are already being litigated, putting projected revenues at risk. Finally, members, I'll conclude with Minnesota's economic strength depends on a tax system that is predictable, transparent, and competitive. For these reasons, the Minnesota Business Partnership respectfully but firmly urges the committee to oppose House File 4343.
Thank you for your testimony. Tanner Fritzinger, you are up. Brian Cook, you're on deck. Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started with your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Gomez, Chair Davids, and members of the committee. My name is Tanner Fritzinger, and I'm a political affairs coordinator for the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees. We are a labor union representing over 18,000 state workers across all agency, boards, and commissions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House File 4343. MATE members work in all segments of state service, whether it is ensuring that our food and water supply is safe, providing a better life for our military veterans, or even taking care of animals at the Minnesota Zoo. MATE members are significant contributors to the high quality of life that is enjoyed by Minnesotans. Currently, the state's forecasted structural imbalance threatens Minnesota's ability to continue to deliver these services and programs that our neighbors rely on. Repealing the tax exemption on advertising services is crucial in addressing the structural imbalance, creating parity in advertisement tax policy, and raising the revenues needed to continue to deliver essential services in the state now and into the future. House File 4343 is a meaningful proposal that would raise revenues from an industry that continues to experience massive growth. This legislation's inclusion of taxing digital advertising on large platforms such as Facebook or Google, in addition to the taxation of advertising on billboards, is essential in broadening the tax code to include more modern streams of revenue. As the cost of delivering essential state services continue to rise and strain our current resources, modernizing the Minnesota's tax base to include emerging industries is the forward thinking required to continue to deliver the programs that MATE members administer. House File 4343 is a step in the right direction, and we ask that members of this committee support its passage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Up next, Brian Cook. On deck is Sarah Frank. Welcome, Mr. Cook.
Good morning, Chair Gomez, members of the House Taxes Committee. My name is Brian Cook. I'm the Director of Tax, Fiscal Policy, and Elections for the Minnesota Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber represents more than 6,300 businesses of all sizes in all corners of the state with more than 500,000 employees. Appreciate the opportunity to share our concerns with Representative Lee's House File 4343 as amended by the A5 amendment, which would expand the state's sales tax to certain primarily digital advertising services. Maryland was the first state to pass a digital advertising tax. Since its enactment in 2021, it has been mired in litigation related to the Internet Tax Freedom Act and the Commerce Clause. Like in Maryland, enacting a digital advertising tax would be a risky proposition that could create additional budget pressure and uncertainty if it were overturned. It's also important to note that as a sales tax, the cost will be borne by the purchasers of these advertising services in Minnesota, who are businesses of all kinds and all sizes, which will increase the cost of operations and likely ultimately be passed along to Minnesota consumers. While the bill cuts the general sales tax rate, it would still be at a minimum a 6.375% cost increase for these services. And that's a baseline minimum since local sales tax rates would also apply. So for example, in the higher tax cities of St. Paul and Golden Valley, that would be over 9%. As a reminder, as we saw in the tax incidence study presentation yesterday from the Department of Revenue, businesses pay a lot of sales taxes. 31% of the total business taxes paid compared to 18% for individuals. Expanding the sales tax base to also include certain professional services related to advertising will also have a negative impact on the Minnesota companies who provide those services and could place them at a disadvantage to out-of-state competitors. Minnesota already ranks among the highest tax states for both individuals and businesses. Instead of closing the gap with our peer and neighboring states, this legislation would widen it. We urge you to reconsider this approach and instead prioritize policies that strengthen the long-term economic viability of Minnesota through growth. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, Sarah Frank, and then Deb Peters on deck.
Good morning, Chair Gomez, Co-Chair Davids, and the members of the Tax Committee. For the record, my name is Sarah Frank, and I'm a dental assistant, and I work at HCMC for 28 years. I'm also the president of AFSCME Local 2474, which is one of 2 locals at HCMC that represents around 2,700 workers. I'm here today to express support for House File 4343, and I want to thank Representative Lee for authoring it. The combination of social media and smartphones might be one of the most behavior-altering systems that's ever been created. Social media companies have very sophisticated algorithms and are tailor-made to each of us, They have used that profile to create an incredibly profitable advertising sector. Meta generated $200 billion in revenue, nearly all of it from advertising. YouTube earned $6 billion in advertising and subscription revenue. Amazon earned $68 billion in advertising revenue. This sector of the economy is rapidly growing, and we believe that now is the time to tap into these revenues so that those profiting greatly at the expense of our mental health can at least contribute to the life-saving medical care provided at hospitals like HCMC. As you have heard, HCMC is not in a good spot. Our uncompensated care has grown substantially over the last decade, and this will get much worse if we do not find more functional source of supporting those without insurance. Unfortunately, right now, we are going the opposite direction. Changes to MA eligibility will likely push out a lot of our patients from having coverage, resulting in more uncompensated care. We are not on a path to remaining open much longer, and we need your help here at the Capitol to fix this before it's too late. For my entire career, nearly 3 decades, I have been helping treat patients who often do not have anywhere else to go. Some of our patients have very serious medical and mental challenges. Some have medical assistance, which limits them who will see them. Some folks do not have any insurance at all, and it is routine for our patients to come in wearing the wristbands from other hospitals who have stabilized them and sent them to us. We do not turn people away. We understand that we are the backstop for everybody. We are the safety net, and without us, our patients would overwhelm area hospitals and cause similar financial challenges to what we are experiencing now. We need your help so we can continue to help others and keep HCMC functional. House File 4343 would be a great way to raise money from some of the most profitable corporations on earth to keep us operating and to help address uncompensated care across Minnesota. Please support House File 4343. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frank. Deb Peters, you're up. After is Ellery Roski. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started.
Good morning, Chair, Madam Chair Gomez and Chair Davids. My name is Deb Peters, and I'm a recovering state senator from the state of South Dakota. So if you have a question about South Dakota sales tax, please let me know. But today I'm here talking on behalf of the Americans for Digital Opportunity. It's an organization that's powered by the Internet Coalition. And I would like to express our strong opposition to House Bill 4343 as amended. This bill would actually impose a tax on all digital and non-digital advertising services with exceptions for print, radio, and TV ads. This isn't a tax on Meta or Google and all of the advertising. It is it's an add-on tax, and it's passed down through to the purchasers who are doing the advertising. This is not a tax on the big companies. So it's important to note that since we've not heard that. Not only does this bill have the exclusions and picks winners and losers, it also raises serious legal concerns that we've already talked about. But also your local businesses, your retailers, your businesses of all sizes, that Minnesota's consumers would actually feel the impact of this bill. They're the ones that we're going to be paying this tax, not the large internet companies that we've heard about. Advertising is one of the most effective and affordable tools that your businesses here in Minnesota have to reach their customers and stay competitive. Taxing advertising and advertising-related services raises costs for everyone. Increasing expenses or inputs by levying additional taxes or new taxes will only trickle down to the smaller local Minnesota businesses that are using all of these tools to tell their story and to grow their consumer base. They will feel the repercussions. By reducing the small business opportunity to tell their story and put their businesses on the map is going to have an effect on your budgets. It will reduce their growth, their income, it'll reduce your gross income tax on corporations, and it will reduce the owner's income and their income tax. In turn, also slowing the growth in income tax and the sales tax collected by the state of Minnesota. The economic impact in Minnesota could be significant. Advertising supports over 550,000 jobs here and drives over $200 billion in economic activity across the state. So this bill threatens all of that activity, and the last thing, and it's the last thing that should be done in Minnesota. And I'll wrap up with that, and please reject the idea of taxing the very tools that help your small businesses.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next, Ellery Roski, and on deck is Paul Egger. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself as you get started.
Good morning, Chair Gomez and members of the committee. My name is Ellery Roski. I'm the mom of 3. My oldest is in kindergarten and attends after-school care. My middle is in child care center part-time, and my youngest here with me today is home with me. He's 2 months, thanks to the Minnesota Paid Family and Medical Leave Act. Growing a family, and I'm here to support and testify in support of HF 4343. Growing a family is not as simple as it once was to decide how many children we wanted to try to have and when to have them. We needed to consider the cost of childcare. In fact, it was the factor that weighed most heavily on our family. When this one begins childcare, our annual cost will be over $37,000, and that's just part-time care thanks to the support we have from family. In addition to childcare, babies require a lot of stuff. As a Minnesota resident, we have to pay taxes on a lot of that stuff, like baby shampoo, lotion, and sunscreen. Sure. But the companies that are advertising those products to me, companies that magically find you as soon as you are pregnant, do not have to pay taxes on that advertising services. Too many elected officials understand this childcare crisis. They too understand that we should be publicly funding childcare so that it's low cost or even no cost to families like mine, and so that the teachers can earn wages on par with K-12 teachers. They even say that funding childcare, that they support funding childcare, but in the next breath say there's no money to do it. By simply including digital advertising services in the Minnesota sales tax, we could collect hundreds of millions of dollars. That says pretty clearly that there is money to support childcare, and that for all of the other social services we know make our communities thrive. Minnesota families are tired of excuses. We want to contribute to our communities, and our state is being told that there isn't enough money to support childcare or education. We're making sure that kids are housed and fed, when clearly there's money for tax breaks for wealthy companies. A budget is a moral document. It shows where our priorities are, and it's well past time to prioritize our kids and family over the wealthy corporations who can do more than pay their fair share. I urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for bringing your baby. We're happy to have them. All right, up next, Paul Egger, and on deck is Nan Madden.
Chair Gomez, Chair Davids,
The baby
members of
wants you
the
to
House Taxes Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on behalf of our 21,500 members who are independent contractor real estate salespersons and brokers to respectfully oppose House File 4343. The overwhelming majority of our independent contractor, our realtors are independent contractors. They're small business owners and entrepreneurs who pay their own expenses, cover their own marketing costs, and take on their own financial risk. As small business owners, investing in advertising is critical to generating clients that translate into income. Typical advertising that realtors engage in that would appear to be taxed under this bill include marketing a seller's home on the multiple listing service, paying for online listing promotion on real estate websites, search engine marketing to ensure listings are visible to buyers, social media advertising for open houses or new listings, professional graphic design for marketing materials, neighborhood signage and directional ads associated with listings, subscribing to referral networks, using customer relationship management tools such as email, text, follow-up systems, and using tools like Google Analytics to track website behavior to understand if their marketing is effective. Expanding the sales tax to advertising services will increase operating costs for our members. This will have a regressive impact that will disproportionately affect newer realtors and small brokerages who rely more on advertising than established realtors who have a strong business of repeat buyers and referrals. It will result in more costs being passed on to consumers, and it will likely mean reduced marketing campaigns, which may limit realtors' ability to promote homes as effectively as they do currently, negatively impacting sellers and decreasing buyers' exposure to homes that would best fit their needs. Thank you for the opportunity again to testify to share our concerns in opposition to House File 4343.
Thank you for your testimony. Up next is Nan Madden, and finally, we're going to hear from a testifier who came last week, who's a person from Duluth, and we'll do that via video. But Ms. Madden, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chair Davids, my name is Nan Madden. I'm Director of the Minnesota Budget Project. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on this issue. We believe the state should raise revenues to protect the public services that Minnesotans in every corner of the state count on. Harmful federal actions are putting more pressure on state and local governments to step in to meet the needs of their residents. H.R. 1 makes drastic funding cuts to affordable health care through Medicaid and food assistance through SNAP, as well as other public services. H.R. 1 permanently shifts more responsibility to fund and deliver those services to our state and counties, while cutting federal funding to the state and constraining our ability to fund services. Additional federal actions have targeted Minnesota with threats to take away federal funding for Medicaid, child care assistance, and other basic assistance. And the ICE Metro surge has created real economic damage to Minnesotans and their communities, not to mention the harm to basic human rights and safety. While the recent state February forecast projects a small surplus in 28-29, things could easily swing in the other direction. We think that sales tax modernization could play a role in an overall package of tax changes that moves us forward to a tax system that is more progressive and adequately and sustainably funds the public services that Minnesotans count on. While we don't currently have a position on this particular revenue raiser, I thank Representative Lee for bringing this bill forward to explore this option. This is one of a number of ideas before the legislature that seeks to modernize our sales tax code by lowering the rate and expanding the base. As you've heard, the sales tax largely focuses on goods but not services. This is a historical practice that does not match our modern economy. And this bill and similar proposals ask whether the state can afford to maintain this somewhat arbitrary distinction, which is eroding the ability of the sales tax to fund public services. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, we're going to try the video thing. We'll see how we do.
Chambers of the committee. My name is Shannon Richardson, and I've been in child care for 15 years. I'm the CEO with Nurseries.
Is this live or just here? It's a video, yeah. I just feel bad because she drove down last week and we didn't get to it. Oh. Yeah.
Well, I was like, you can't be live.
I think if there's an option to,
I'm currently the CEO of City Nursery.
we're just, if there's an option to read her testimony, let's go with that.
Oh, it's right here.
Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started with your testimony.
Yes, thank you. My name is Kelly Martinson. I will read Shannon Richardson's testimony. She was here last week, but unfortunately couldn't make it this week, as if I am her. Good morning, Chair Gomez and members of the committee. My name is Shannon Richardson, and I've been in childcare for 17 years. I'm currently the CEO with University Nursery Schools, a nonprofit in Duluth. We have 5 centers, 450 students, and 150 staff. I'm here to testify in support of HF 4343 to extend sales tax to advertising. My family, like all families, spends a lot of money on things in our state that corporations spend millions of dollars advertising to us. but the corporations are not paying sales tax on advertising services. As a childcare provider, I hear from legislators that they want to support childcare, but I am told there's no money. I'm frustrated at that sentiment, yet hopeful that together we can find a solution. There is money, and not using it to fund infrastructure like childcare is harmful. Childcare allows our workforce and our communities to thrive. High-quality care is expensive to provide. Right now, the bulk of that cost is paid by families, but it's also subsidized by our staff. Providers have historically made low wages because if we charge families more to pay teachers more, we price families out of care. Low wages increase the already high staff turnover that the field is prone to. Excuse me. We know that funding makes an impact. The Great Start compensation grants have allowed providers to increase wages and benefits in the field, but it's nowhere near enough to keep our most qualified and quality staff. I have shed tears over losing staff meant for this field simply because they haven't been able to afford to stay in it. There are centers that still settle for subpar staff because they can't hold on to quality staff that they need and deserve. A fully funded system would allow us to support staff much better than we do now. Our staff have a lot of tools, but none of them are specialists. Stabilizing our field, making sure we have the means to hire and support high-quality staff, and investing in our children benefits our entire state. I urge you to pass this bill, as these wealthy corporations themselves are only able to make their millions because their employees have care. Minnesota families deserve affordable, high-quality care. Teachers also deserve a livable wage and benefits, and high-quality staff directly impact those that matter the most, the kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. That is the end of the pre-filed testimony. Is there anyone else present who wishes to testify on this bill? Seeing none, I will move. Oh, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record as you get started with your testimony.
I am Nathaniel M. Olson, the disability advocate for the state of Minnesota. I'm in opposition of this bill, and here's the reason why. I have done research on the spending of Minnesota, okay? I do have a graph, and with federal grants that we're getting is $42 billion. You know what the other revenue? The other revenue in the state of Minnesota is $79 billion. We have raised up so much taxes in the state of Minnesota, and now, right now, we are looking at a bill that is going to digitalize more taxes. This is not going to help Minnesota families at all. This is going to make it hard for stuff to be informed and stuff. Right now, I could literally tell you where all of this money is going, and the highest right now is K-12. The second is the Department of Human Services. So I'm urging you to say no to this bill because this is not going to help. We already have a motion of car tabs going to be $1,300. I think that is ridiculous in the state of Minnesota. We are now listed #1 with the highest taxes in the state of Minnesota. We just beat California. More taxes is not going to help Minnesota families. Do you know how many businesses left the state of Minnesota? 13,000 businesses left the state of Minnesota. And you're telling me that you want to bring another bill that could hurt more businesses? I think this is ridiculous. We need lower taxes for people to live in the state of Minnesota, not raise them up. It's going to be very, very hard for people to afford stuff. So I hope this side of the committee thinks and really thinks on this. Is this going to help Minnesota or make Minnesota worse? Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else present who wishes to testify on House File 4343? Not seeing any, we will move to member discussion. Representative Joy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this one's for the bill author. Would this be considered a business-to-business tax, Representative Lee?
Representative Lee.
I guess I'd defer to Ms. Hagler on that.
Or the department, either or.
Ms. Hagler.
Madam Chair and Representative Joy, the tax would be imposed when the sale of the service is made. So if it is a business who is purchasing the service, then the business would be paying the tax.
Representative Joy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what we're hearing is it's a business-to-business tax is what we're hearing, I guess. And it just, we're moving a tax here again, as we just heard testimony on both sides, and I understand what we're doing here to increase taxes, to save a little bit over here. It just seems like to me that we're just shuffling money. And I think I understand the contents of the bill, but I think we need to really start reducing the tax level in Minnesota to keep people here. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Weiner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess mine is not so much as a question as a statement. We've used, or it's been used several times in this committee and other places, the term revenue raiser, which is really deceptive. This is another tax on consumers. Businesses and the big names that were mentioned are not going to just take that out of the profit margin, they're going to pass it on to the consumer. And unfortunately, what's going to happen with these small businesses who have these available advertising means, they're going to have to pass that on to their consumers as well. So the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of revenue that was discussed here is not going to come from the big businesses that has been mentioned. It is going to come on the backs of the taxpayers in this state once again. When we're hearing again and again and again that people are overtaxed, and we have lost so much in adjusted gross income over the last 5 years, we've lost businesses, one of the highest tax states, which was mentioned by one of the testifiers. It seems absolutely insane to me that we would add more taxes onto the people in the state who are taxed enough already. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Weiner. Representative Lee?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I actually did want to respond to these comments and also some of the testimony that we heard earlier about the impact on small businesses. As we heard from Mr. Bernstein, right, the digital ad industry is a $1 billion industry that is only growing. And so, I would say when you look at our digital economy and the internet now, a lot of the small businesses that we have in Minnesota actually don't have these multi-million dollar advertising budgets. They're using free influencers and they're using other ways of doing their own free advertising. And so I really refocus us back to, the corporations that we're trying to target here. And again, the question is not what are we taxing or what is the rate, right? But it's who are we taxing, right? And right now we are not taxing these corporations that are buying ads in Minnesota. And so I just like to make sure folks understand that.
Thank you, Representative Lee. Representative Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Representative Lee. Maybe I'll just first ask a question of Representative Lee, and then I have a comment on the bill itself. I believe the widening of this tax base, part of your bill is also to lower the sales tax. Is that correct, and could you expand on that in this bill?
Representative Lee?
Yes, that is the goal.
Representative Smith?
So on the A5, it's on 2.6 and 2.7, members of the committee. This would take the sales tax, which is currently at 6.5, down to 6.375. So there's a couple of ways to look at this. One is we are making a more fair landscape in our larger business landscape. There was a group from realtors here that argued against this bill because they don't want to have the sales tax trickle down to them, which I understand. But at the same time, they're realtors who are selling homes. And when contractors build those homes, they pay sales taxes on the lumber and other resources that are used. Businesses pay sales tax on the office supplies that they use. We heard from a child care provider. They're going to pay sales tax when they have to run out and grab wipes that they left out on. And all of those groups are going to save money on this bill because the overall sales tax is going to go down. When we widen our sales tax base, we are able to lower it for everyone else. And And the second thing I want to say is, as we're talking about the digital landscape, that is the landscape that we are going to be existing in the future. Business is going to continue to get more and more online. And as that graph shows that Representative Lee brought in, we need to be moving our sales tax base to the digital landscape to better reflect how commerce is done in this day. So I think this is a great bill, a great starting discussion. Thank you, Representative Lee.
Thank you, Representative Smith. Up next, Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Wiener, that was really interesting, your discussion there. I hear where you're going, and we're all going through this right now. The economy has definitely changed most of our spending habits in the last year, and so I get what you're saying is that tax, tariff, whatever it is, it goes back to the consumer. But I am interested in this particular tax, as we as legislators throughout the years have looked at places that have caused problems for us in other areas, such as the cigarette tax, or we're seeing today the marijuana tax that we're putting on things, and maybe we call them sin taxes. I don't know what the word is, but we know that we need to come up with a way to start controlling the internet. And we need to come up with a way that would start slowing down that traffic. I believe this. And this seems like, and I'm going to go against my realtors. 10,000 apparently are going to vote against me now. But
More than that.
yeah, there's more than that. You're right. Sorry, Chair. But I think that this is a starting practice, because even as a politician, I'm going to get taxed on this now, and I'm okay with that. If we can start slowing the process down and putting more of an equal playing field, because that's another thing we do with tax, right? But I'm just not looking at this as a revenue gainer. I'm looking at this as a possible way to probably slow this down. I mean, in the greater Minnesota, they still have radio stations and newspapers and things like that. Maybe if we had a way to slow the media tax here in the metro, maybe we would bring back radio stations and newspapers again. So it's just a philosophical thought on the whole thing. And I welcome the debate from the other side here, because I really do think that there's a lot to be said here. And this is an area that we really got to dig into and see how we can start slowing it down a little bit and catching up with where things are at. And it definitely is the way we're living our life today. So thank you for the indulgence here, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Hewitt.
Madam Chair, since my name was invoked, can I
Representative
respond?
Wiener.
Thank you. Just a suggestion, Representative Hewitt, is if you're okay with more taxes, how about we have this as an opt-in thing? That if people are okay with higher taxes, you can opt in and pay more taxes, and the rest of us don't. Well, let's just look at people who are okay with paying more.
Yeah, let's go through the chair if we want to go back and forth, or else we could just not, but it's up to y'all. Okay, Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll try to be brief, because my comment is more philosophical than directly related to the policy. But I appreciate you bringing this bill, Representative Lee, and I'm so disappointed to hear everybody saying, well, the taxes won't work, they're just going to get passed down to consumers. We hear this again and again and again. You can't do increased minimum wage, they'll just get passed down to consumers. You can't ask people to be held accountable, it just gets passed down to consumers. At what point are we going to say we're Minnesotans and we're not going to be held hostage by large corporations? Like, this is not the reality we want to live in. We just heard from people who couldn't find housing, who were suffering from addiction and needed services, parents who can't afford their childcare, and yet we've got billionaires here, and we're like, well, there's nothing we can do. They just keep getting richer, and we just have to suffer through it. Like, at some point, we need to come up with solutions. Like, I'm tired of hearing people say, this is never going to work. Then bring something that is going to work. Because it's not working for Minnesotans right now. And we've heard it again and again and again in testimony and in letters. And the fact is, like, Mark Zuckerberg owes us money, period. We deserve to have people with housing, with food, with medical care that is stable. And if you don't think taxes are the right way, please bring another solution, because this just isn't sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hollins. Is there any further member discussion? Representative Johnson.
So, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
question I have, I'm just going to start off with a question. The amendment, and I just want to make sure I read this correctly, that this does not apply towards newspapers, periodicals, magazines, publishing, radio, broadcasting, television broadcasting, correct? I believe that's correct.
Representative Lee.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that because as a small business, and I mentioned that this morning in workforce, that Minnesota has fallen towards the bottom in percentage of new businesses being started year over year. Small businesses start as small businesses. Small businesses like me are finding it harder and harder to afford these type of advertising, TV, periodicals, direct mails, and stuff like that. So what have we found? We have found we can go digital. And I'm doing that as my business. And I went, okay, I can't compete with the big boys. I'm a small business. And so now I found out we can do Facebook ads. We can do even Roku. We can do so many of these things, and it's cheap. It's cheap, so we can afford that, so we can get out there. What this bill does is then turns around and slaps the face of small business people and saying, nope, there you go. We found another way to make money, and we're going to make it harder and harder for your small business to grow and succeed again. So that's why I think this is a bad bill, because it hits small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Chair Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Lee, for being creative and bringing this forward for discussion. Can you remind us again how this changes the overall sales tax base?
Representative Lee.
Yes, thank you. So I know Representative Smith pointed this out earlier. You'll see on line 2.7 that it brings the sales tax rate down to 3.75, but because Minnesota voters elected to pay more taxes to protect our trails and the wilderness, we have the legacy tax, and then there are other taxes. So in effect, it's a sales tax rate of 6.75.
Chair Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That sounds like a good savings for some of our small businesses.
All right, thank you, Representative Joachim. Is there any further discussion to House File 4343? Chair Davids.
Well, thank you so much. This bill is never going to work. The taxes won't go to the people. It just gets passed on to consumers. Lowering rates. I'm just a simple farm boy from Fillmore County. And with what my good friend Chair Joachim just said, she says good savings for business. Not a timeout. You lower the rates, but this bill raises $600 million. That doesn't sound like a good deal for business. Not for my business. So what really disturbs me about this bill is we just had the suits index yesterday. If you look at sales taxes on the suits index, it's very regressive. It's very regressive. This bill, don't make no mistake about it. We say we're for the poor. If you vote for this bill, you're not for the poor. You're raising taxes on the poor. Now, you raise taxes on somebody like me, whatever. But I'm not here to raise taxes on the poor. I refuse to do that, and that's exactly what this bill does. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Representative Davids wants us to raise his taxes, I'm pretty sure. Representative Lee.
Yeah, so, we don't have an analysis on this, but arguably, when you look at the suits index, when you expand the tax base, you actually improve your suits index number and you make sales tax more progressive. And so, yes, absolutely true that, right, like yesterday's tax incidence reports, again, showed us how regressive the sales tax is. But if you want to solve that problem, if you genuinely want to solve that problem, you would widen the tax base. That is a proven way to make it more progressive. Should I do closing?
Yes, please, Representative Lee.
Okay, thanks. So I did want to address some of the points about like litigation and administration, which I guess didn't come out in the member discussion, but just did want to point out that the Maryland ad tax bill has been in place for about 5 years. It's still collecting revenues, and part of their hang-up is a disclaimer language that was part of how that bill was drafted. We don't have that in this bill, so that would not be a problem here. The Washington bill has some issues because it is strictly only digital ads. That's not the case here as well, and so I want folks to go away understanding that this bill is actually drafted intentionally to be robust, and so that's not something that you need to worry about in terms of litigation, just because other states have had issues with their ad tax bills. I think for me, the most important thing that I want folks to understand is that past legislatures have been able to get away with not modernizing the tax code, but we're at a pretty critical juncture, right? We have a changing economy, and as some of the testifiers here today showed us, there's been, our economy is also feeling the strain of a growing K economy, and all the while, right, our tax base is shrinking relative to the growth of the economy just because it's changing. We also know that because of H.R. 1, there are billions of dollars that will be cut to the state budget. And so when Minnesota exempts the vast majority of services, including all of this rapidly growing digital sector, this is a major problem for our state. While we have to still fund childcare, schools, government services, and healthcare in our modern economy. So again, the question is, who pays for our outdated laws? That's Minnesotans in every corner of the state. We pay higher taxes because of outdated laws that don't reflect our new economy, which has evolved in the last 60 years. House File 4343 helps us solve this problem by broadening the tax base so that it reflects the truth of our modern world. This helps Minnesotans towards a stronger and more stable budget. And so, today, the argument is, we are trying to tax billion-dollar corporations so that we can lower taxes on everyone else in Minnesota. Thanks.
Thank you, Representative Lee. With that, Representative Lee will renew her motion that House File 4343, as amended, be laid over for possible inclusion in the 2026 tax bill. The bill is laid over.